for our PIX panel. Joining me this week, Ben Max, host of the Max Politics podcast and new to the Politics panel, Gwynne Hogan from the city. So great to have both of you here. I want to begin with the big news on the migrant crisis front this week. President Biden announcing the U.S. will grant legal status to hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan migrants, which means that they can now start working, right? That was big news. The big question now, Gwynne, let me begin with you, is will that be enough to stop those budget cuts from happening that the mayor was talking about?
I think it's really too soon to tell. They're not going to magically get work permits overnight. You still have to apply to get TPS and then apply for a work permit through that process. We know that many parts of the immigration system are clogged with bureaucratic delays, and from what we understand, this could be a process that could take several months. So it's not going to be a silver bullet. And another big challenge here is educating people and making sure that they can understand that they can apply for this, which the city has struggled to do so far with asylum claims. Right. We know very few people have started their formal process.
Wait, they have to want to go ahead and file that paperwork, because the mayor was even here last week on PIX Politics saying that a lot of them were turning to the black market for jobs and working off the books. Ben, you know, there's the progressive leaders arguing that there should be higher taxes on the city's wealthiest, right, rather than budget cuts. So any chance of that even happening, first and foremost?
Oh, that's extremely unlikely. That would have to happen through the state, and there seems to be very little appetite from Governor Hochul for raising taxes, even on the wealthiest New Yorkers, and the state legislature calling a special session to do that anytime this year at least is extremely unlikely. So the earliest you would ever see anything like that would be through next year's April state budget. And I would say right now, everyone at the city level has to plan as if there's no additional tax revenue coming through that mechanism. But there are a lot of questions about exactly how the mayor's numbers add up and whether the city can actually do more to reduce some of the costs of shelter. But there are more migrants arriving, as the mayor has rightly said, and this move by the president will not immediately clear out the shelters that the city is paying for.
Right, and he was saying, well, look, it's 40% Venezuelans, but there are so many different numbers, right? And Ben, let me stay with you for a second, because Governor Hochul tweeted that this came as a result of her talks with the president, and Mayor Adams was not part of those discussions. So why? Why? It almost seemed like they were avoiding each other while the president was here for 3 days.
They definitely were. The relationship between Mayor Adams and President Biden has soured in a big way over the last year. You know, it's been interesting. I don't think this was an intentional strategy, but the mayor and the governor have been doing something of a bad cop, good cop routine here, where the mayor has been out there much more critical of the president, and the governor has continued to work a little bit more behind the scenes. And it has at least paid off a little bit for New York in the process, but there's definitely a very cold relationship now between Adams and his allies and the Biden White House.
Yeah, and he was asked about this many times this week.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially leading up to an election year, next year, you don't want somebody who's been calling themselves the face of the Democratic Party to be in such contentious relationships with President Biden. We'll definitely
he used to call himself the Biden of Brooklyn, the mayor, that is. Gwynne, I want to ask you about some of your reporting from last week, because I found it very interesting, right? And we'll throw it up, because the city was reportedly shortening the time that migrants are to stay in shelters. Here's the article, right? And that includes families with children, 30 days for adults, 60 days for families. But the mayor stopped short when I asked him about your reporting, saying, well, I'm not there yet in terms of releasing a timeline.
That's right. Those two pieces were under consideration by the administration. So to be clear, families with children should not be getting warnings to leave shelters. At this point, the city has said that they're still giving these notices to adult migrants in shelter, starting with a 60-day notice. And then if you choose to get a second placement after you run out your 60 days, you'll only be getting another 30 days in shelter. What's still up for question is if you're newly entering the system as an adult, will you get 60 or 30 days? At this point, they've still said 60, but it's 30 is definitely shortening that clock is being considered, including for migrant families. That's a matter under consideration.
Understood. And real quick here, let me squeeze this into you, Ben. A lot of focus on next year's elections, right? There's the big races nationally, right? House, Senate, so on and so forth. The City Council also up for re-election come November. Any indicators that it could become less democratic because of everything playing out?
Absolutely. There's a lot of hope on the conservative side of the aisle that they can take at least a couple more seats in the city council. There's a handful of really interesting competitive races, including a couple in Brooklyn especially. And, you know, the Republicans in the city council are still going to be a very distinct minority, but there's a chance that they can build on some prior momentum to add even more seats, yes.
All right, very good. Great to have both of you here. Gwynne, Ben, thank you for being on PIX Politics. We'll be right back.